Welcome to the Buck Stops here, the official podcast of NotInHallOfFame.com, and I'm your host, Kirk Buchner, aka The Buck, the owner and the operator of NotInHallOfFame.com and the sister sites, the Fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame and the Fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. If you haven't yet, check those out, and you can cast your vote. We're going to be announcing the semifinalists for both of those classes pretty soon. It's Season 1, Episode 19 of our weekly Hall of Fame show, and Evan Nolan and I, we've looked at quite a few things this week. A legend has passed on, Little Richard, probably one of the most important figures in all of rock and roll history, and we look at his life and his impact. We also look at George St Pierre, who's been announced as the latest inductee for the class of 2020 in the UFC Hall of Fame, and we looked at Richard Seymour. Richard Seymour has been announced as the newest inductee for the New England Patriots HOF. We also took a look at Yadi Molina, who recently was asked if he's a Hall of Famer. He says the stats speak for themselves. Do they? Well, we asked that question more. And we also look at a couple other things. Evan's great tournament of the fame of who is the most villainous of all the Disney villains. Well, he's going to tell you. Put a lot of work into it, and we finally unveiled the winner for that. And also, we're looking at a bit of preliminary work, the United States Athletic Hall of Fame. Well, that doesn't exist. Well, we're going to start to get to work on that. We've got a few ideas, and without further ado, here's Evan. Thanks so much for listening. Evan, how you doing? I hope we're okay, because we had a little politically charged discussion right before.
Yeah, let's not go into that, though. Let's bask in the glow of my first ever tweet I've had after, 8 or 9 or 10 years on Twitter, where I actually got over 1,000 likes out of nowhere. See, I now feel like the media mogul that you deserve on this program.
So you have to tell the story. I think that's a nice way to open up.
Well, I underestimated the love of the Twitter public for Vanilla Ice news, really is what it comes down to. Somebody had asked for our most mundane encounter with a celebrity, and they brought up that they had seen my birthday buddy, by the way, Diane Keaton, born on January 5th, Diane Keaton in The Gap in 2002. And I just responded with, in 2011, I saw Vanilla Ice getting an iced coffee in Logan Airport, Terminal C. And yes, my wife made he's getting an iced coffee to go joke, which is why I married her. And after all the hundreds of tweets I put out over the years, I don't think I've ever gotten more than 50 likes on anything. All of a sudden, my phone was going insane. And I ended up with almost 1,200 likes on that thing so far, which is weird. The internet is weird. You know that?
Very weird. Very, very weird. I thought things were going to blow up at one point when I got a retweet from Rosie O'Donnell. It led to nothing. Not a single thing. I don't even know that it even led to more followers on the site. It may not have at all. It was just sort of
who knows?
Mentioning her performance as I forget the last name, as Doris in A League of Their Own.
Mm. Oh yeah, actually that was actually a good lead-in. That was the only other person who I know we have a huge depth to talk about this week, but I did forget one, that the last member of the Rockford Peaches passed away this week. I don't know if you saw that.
I did, yeah. I saw that on ESPN.com.
102. So, and she also played for Racine up in Wisconsin because she got traded because they had a competitive balance. They just would move players around to make the teams equal, basically. But yeah, so I don't know. That was just a tie-in. We usually don't get any sort of lead-ins that work as well as Rosie O'Donnell, League of Their Own, to the last player from that team passing away. I think we're getting better at this.
Well, I've got plenty of time to screw it up. So
how are you? How's COVID-19 going down in the tropics?
Very well, I think. The Prime Minister here has done a phenomenal job just keeping everyone safe. Mask use, as I was telling you before, it's up to around, I'd say just 80% of people outside are just always wearing masks. Doing what they can to keep everyone safe. We're finally allowed to do takeout on Monday, so I'm pretty excited about that. I can finally get my pizza craving in.
Nice.
But yeah, no, they're.
And have you been to the liquor store? America wants to know.
No.
And Canada.
No.
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 Wow. This is getting serious.
Yeah, this is day 60 of my self-imposed sobriety. It's not 30,000 push-ups like you're doing.
Hey, I'm getting there. That was the other thing happened to me this week. For those, I don't think I've mentioned it before, but I almost never make New Year's resolutions, and if I do, I don't tell anybody. But this year I decided I needed to start getting myself in some sort of shape here. And I had a Spartan race I was planning on doing at the end of this month, which got canceled with everything else. So I knew in Spartan racing, have you ever done one of those obstacle course races?
No. Well, just little things as a kid, but not those Spartan things didn't exist then.
Right. So there are all sorts of obstacles in a Spartan race, and if you screw up on an obstacle, you're supposed to do 30 burpees as like a punishment and then keep going. So if you're like on the monkey bars and slip off, which has happened to me basically every time I've been in the monkey bars during one of those things, because there's obstacle 15 out of 27 when you get there. I just didn't want to do any more burpees. So I figured if I built my upper body strength, it would be a good idea. So I put out there I was going to do 30,000 push-ups this year, which is an average of just under 82 a day. It's like 81.96 something. And I hit 10,000 on the 11th, which was Monday, which is 10 days behind what I would have had I just done 82 a day, but I was starting from zero. So the first month I was way behind. I'm a third of the way through. I've done them every day except for one day in March where my shoulder went pop and hurt the first time I tried doing a push-up that day. But I've done it every single day except for that one day in March. And I'm up in 10,200 plus at this point and try to make it. So we'll see. I'm definitely on pace at this point, because I'm doing 100 to 125 a day. I'm definitely at pace at this point to get there, hopefully around Thanksgiving. Which would be kind of amazing. Clearly
in better shape than I'm in. If push-ups and me, if you saw the opening bit of Stripes, I'm Bill Murray trying to do those push-ups.
What time is it? 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock? What time's graduation? 1 o'clock. Good. You still got an hour to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. I guess we should get into sort of like the biggest news of the week. It's funny, every time we think there's going to be nothing, and then something like this happens. One of the biggest figures in rock and roll, an inaugural inductee into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, is dead. Little Richard at age 87.
Yeah, I mean, he on several occasions claimed that he invented rock and roll, and well, you might want to laugh at that. It's actually, you could have an argument that he was at least one of the people at the very forefront of inventing rock and roll.
I'd say so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would say he and Chuck Berry are the two people I'd put out there in front of everybody else. But yeah, Richard Wayne Pennyman, we talked about him actually last week in passing, remember? When we talked about his former drummer.
Yes.
So if there's anyone you want to kill off, we should just mention them in passing this week. But I went looking for stuff on him, and I found this line from the Oxford American Magazine, which is a Southern Living magazine, which I'm sure you get all of the time. But columnist Dave Ramsey had a description of Little Richard, which I thought was pretty amazing. It was that Little Richard was the freak, the circus showman, the vamping diva, the holy ghost. He sounds breathless and fierce, a little unhinged. He sounds like the last man on earth singing the first song ever written. I just thought that was poetic and kind of amazing, because Little Richard, when you think about it, not that great a singer. He would not do well in The Masked Singer.
Well, especially now.
He would be yes, right. Well, I don't know if you saw who got voted off yesterday.
I definitely did not. Tell me.
Fourth place was a rhinoceros. And almost definitely the highest rating highest finish for any athlete. It was Barry Zito of the Oakland Athletics.
Okay.
He ended up finishing fourth. So, but anyway, he was actually not bad. People thought he was Trace Adkins or like a country singer, and he ended up doing pretty well for a guy who just was a pitcher. But anyway, back to Little Richard, who's much more important. No, I mean, Little Richard is, I mean, he's one of those people who, you and I are both, you're a little bit older than I am, but we're both in our 40s at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Little Richard's one of those people who's been an adult our entire lives. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I remember him, I think the first time, probably as a kid, I became cognizant of who Little Richard was there's like a rockin' Mother Goose show that had all sorts of rock stars. I think Jerry Lee Lewis was in it, and a whole bunch of like people playing all the Mother Goose rhymes. And like, who is that guy? And my mom had a whole bunch of, actually, and I have them in here, records from Little Richard and a whole bunch of other people that she would play. And that's Bebop-A-Lua, not Bebop, and Tutti Frutti, and all those other songs just became part of growing up, I guess, in my house, because my mom really stopped caring about what music came out after about 1967. So, yeah, I mean, it's an incomparable loss to music at this point. I don't think there's any other person in music who could pass away who would have had at this point, would have had the influence that Little Richard did.
Yeah, well, that one would have been almost like with Florian Schneider last week and something pretty similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the only other person who comes to mind at all, and this is someone much later, is Elton John at this point, in terms of just sustained whatever. But I mean, of all the original folks in rock, they're almost all gone at this point. He's got to be maybe.
I think the only one I can think of a '50s icon who's still with us, and I'm sure there's some people that's like right after we're done, they'll all come flooding back to my head. But I think Jerry Lee Lewis might be the only one.
Yeah, Jerry Lee Lewis is the one I was thinking of. Yeah, he's 84. But his wife is only 15. No, sorry. Oh, he's really bad. You should probably cut that, but you won't.
No, I won't. I won't at all. Because I'm actually I'll sort of top it. You know, I keep going with these Mount Rushmore references. One of the ones that actually, because I'm working on like a history of number one songs and like this whole anthology. And one of the things I wrote was my Mount Rushmore of 1950s rock, pretty much the godfathers of rock and roll. It's Elvis, Buddy Holly, Chuck Berry, and Little Richard. Little Richard might be the only one who didn't have sex with an underage girl.
Right. Well, yeah. If anyone was underage, it probably wasn't a girl with him. But yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, interesting. That was a thing in the 50s, though. I mean, just think of all those songs when you think about it, like 16 Candles. All those people singing that were like 27.
I'll always maintain the creepiest one was Gene Simmons, Christine 16.
Yeah, you brought that up before.
That's worth bringing up again.
Yeah,
because it's
or that Sweet Caroline was written about 9-year-old Caroline Kennedy.
It was?
Yeah,
I did not know that.
Yeah, now think about that song. That song was written about Caroline Kennedy, who's only 9 at the time.
Touching me, touching you. Ooh.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's.
And it wasn't even Tom Jones. Yeah. But anyway, back to Little Richard. Yeah, at this point, almost all those folks at the forefront of rock are. There's one other, I guess, who's a little bit later, but Bob Dylan is 78, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, here I found a list here. Here are people over 70 who are still going. So, Bob Dylan, Paul McCartney, Paul Simon, Art Garfunkel, Carole King, and Brian Wilson are all 77. Mick Jagger is 76. Keith Richards is 415. Keith Richards, Joni Mitchell, Jimmy Page, Ray Davies are all 75. Roger Daltrey, 75. Pete Townsend is 74. Rod Stewart, Eric Clapton, Debbie Harry, they're all 74, but all those guys are later.
None of those guys are 50s people.
Yeah, those are all the 60s folks, so I think you're right.
Thing with Little Richard. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think Jerry Lee Lewis is now the last man standing.
The thing with Little Richard, though, too, that 'cause I was reading a lot of the tributes, and then when you look, if he was sort of in that Mount Rushmore, which I'll use that again, he was sort of like the biggest showman of the group, I thought.
Agreed.
Which certainly was very influential. And later, the only problem is it also made him a parody of himself. So whereas Chuck Berry, I think, always sort of like remained legendary, even though we didn't necessarily have. I mean, yeah, he had his biggest hit in 71 with "My Ding-a-Ling," which is only number one hit, by the way.
It's all right. Grateful Dead's only top 40 hit was "Touch of Grey," so.
Because I think like that's sort of the complicated legacy of Little Richard. I mean, like what he did. Iconically, and then he gave himself a lot of credit as you discussed, calling himself the real king of rock and roll, and he said that when I was trying to remember as much stuff as I could, because when I mentioned Charles Connor last week, that was sort of a throwaway, and then like in prepping for this, and I read back the piece I wrote. And some of the things that he said about him. Little Richard essentially believed a lot of that he was sort of the king of rock and roll because he did predate Elvis. One of the questions that I asked Mr. Connor back then was, and he didn't really answer it on behalf of Little Richard, but because like a lot of the things sort of came up how Pat Boone covered a lot of the material of Little Richard, and if there's anything worse than hearing... I don't know what's worse. Pat Boone covering Tutti Frutti or when Paul Anka did Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
The answer is still Madonna covering American Pie.
That was so bad. Yeah, that was her not just jump off the shark, just completely leap over top of it and via catapult. She was pretty much done after that. So, yeah, one of the questions I asked Mr. Connor was, like, did it bother you when all these covers were coming out? And he said, nah, it didn't bother me at all, because it made people seek out what the real music was.
Mm-hmm.
And there was other tributes that sort of came out. And actually, I want your perspective on this, because I was talking to my dad about this actually a few hours ago. Because, he was sort of coming of age in the 50s. And unlike your mom, his music sort of ended in 1962 as opposed to 67. Okay. So, that was sort of like part of his childhood. He didn't really have a whole lot of memories about Little Richard specifically. But in some of the tributes that we're pouring in, just sort of talk about how he's this queer icon. And yes, he was sort of, obviously he struggled with the sexuality all his life. We're going to assume he's gay. He said in many interviews that he's gay. He said in many interviews that he's not. He said in other interviews he's homosexual. In one of the last interviews I could find of him, he's condemning transgender, gay, everything. So I guess my question is, like, even though I think you and I can both agree that the man was gay. I don't think I'm really setting anything ablaze on that. I don't think you're digging any new roads in that one.
Right. So no.
Right.
But I think we agree on that.
With the gay friends that I've had and acquaintances, just when the topic of music comes up, now granted we're all of a certain age, so I don't see why Little Richard would come up, but I don't know how much of he is as a queer icon.
I mean, that I honestly can't speak to. But yeah, it's interesting because I always presumed he was, but I never bothered to think about the impact of that. Because I mean, he was coming up and doing all that in a time where there were a lot of confirmed bachelors out there. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And things like that would not necessarily come up. It was more scandalous. I mean, the scandals ended with guys swinging their hips while singing "Love Me Tender" at that point, because everybody was still doing that with like crew cut or a poodle skirt, and the other things just weren't talked about yet.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit interesting there because when he was at the top, at the top of that. It was just not something that was even really in the discussion, as far as we could tell, for people who were born 2 decades later. From that, exactly what the power of his sexuality had on the gay movement, which really, again, I know it happened before this, but really started gathering steam in the late 70s and into the 80s when the AIDS epidemic hit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's just something that I've been trying to figure out, because I kept reading that, and I'm thinking, again, I wish I had someone I could sort of speak to in terms of some of the LGBTQ musicians out there. But I wonder how many of them really were inspired by him, and I don't think that many. I think his influence was just in your main vein of rock and roll and maybe a bit of showmanship. I'm sure like someone like Elton John might have sort of felt him as an inspiration to how, just sort of like how to dress, how to sort of like put yourself forefront when you're playing the piano. But in terms of one gay man to another, I don't know.
It's interesting. I was thinking about this. Last night on the Daily Show, or the Daily Social Distancing Show, as it's calling itself at the moment, Trevor Noah was on with Billy Porter. Mm-hmm. And Billy Porter is a legend on Broadway, a very well regarded gay icon. I mean, and gay rights.
Love him in American Horror Story.
Yeah, right. And he was fantastic in Kinky Boots. I don't know. I will still put up there. I know we've never talked about this before, but I'll still put up there that Neil Patrick Harris's opening to the 2013 Tonys is the single best opening of any award show of all time. And his line in there for when he's talking about Kinky Boots, that you can bounce a quarter off the ass of Billy Porter because he does 8 shows a week in 10-inch heels, is one of my favorite lines of all time. It was written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, that line, but that was just fantastic. Anyway, completely off the subject. But he was talking to Billy Porter about how in this day and age, with everyone trying to be social vigilantes on Twitter, not actually getting out and doing anything, what would need to be happening. He talked about the icons of the past who led the equal civil rights movement and what's been going on with gay rights over the last 40 years and everything like that. And someone who should have been in that conversation, particularly since passed away this week, was Little Richard, and he wasn't brought up at all. Now, I don't know what that means, but when you brought that up, because Billy Porter, an African-American gay man, talking to an African, not even African-American, an African man, who I believe is straight, in Trevor Noah, talking about what needed to happen advocacy-wise and things like that, and Little Richard wasn't even a topic of conversation, and they're going back and forth, which is interesting. So I hadn't thought about the question you originally posed to me, but having seen that interview last night, it makes me wonder exactly where he does fall within that pantheon. I think that'd be a great question to ask somebody who has some say in that more than you or I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was just like that one of the tributes that sort of came out that just sort of stuck with me, and I just don't see it. But again, I'm not the person who would see it.
Right.
But that's neither here nor there. I do want to sort of close one thing on Little Richard, because he did, with that trouble that he had in the plane, was it 57 or 58, when he suddenly stopped playing music, or he just decided he would sort of like go back, because he went back and forth between wanting to be a rock star and a gospel singer. Musically, I think a lot of the people who sort of hung on in the 50s, he probably had only 2-3 more years left before with the British invasion. And then, because as soon as the Beatles hit, by 63, 64, when it hit the U.S., so much music sort of sounded so dated. But we were sort of robbed from a lot of other music that Little Richard would have created. Because right at the peak, in his mid-late 20s, he just abandoned rock and roll altogether before he came back to it.
Yeah.
And
that is a very good point.
Yeah, and I think as much as you and I and so many other people were celebrating him as the rock and roll legend that he was, and still is. I mean, legends the legend doesn't die. It could have been so much more.
Yeah, that's also probably true. But at the same time, like, if you imagine how much the legend could have been more, and yet we're still discussing him as one of the, if you're going to just do the forefathers of rock and roll, he's on the Mount Rushmore. There's no question. It's him, Chuck Berry, and I'll take requests on who the other two are going to be.
Elvis and Buddy Holly.
Those are pretty good ones.
Yeah, although my favorite though of all those four by far, Buddy Holly. But that's just a personal preference.
Yeah, that's a man who died far, far too young, and all because he couldn't get a decent laundromat. You laugh at that, but the plane was overloaded with his laundry.
No,
he had like.
No, I'm laughing, and then I'm thinking, oh God, I'm going to hell. Well, I think I cemented that a long time ago.
Yeah. So
there's a couple things
anyway.
I want to touch on as we moving on. A fellow Canadian is being honored, Georges St Pierre. Mm-hmm. The mixed martial arts to the UFC, not the mixed. I got to be very careful with that. To the UFC Hall of Fame, which is I know that that's not one of your favorite things, but UFC is one of those things I try to watch a lot more than I actually do. Very, obviously a huge legend in Canada, and really the whole field. Only lost twice as a fighter. UFC Hall of Fame doesn't actually have a physical place yet, so that's why it's a little bit.
But how long has UFC been around?
Let's see. I want to say 93.
Oh, it's been around that long. I wasn't aware of it until probably the late 2000s. Yeah. Like 2007, 2008 is probably when I first became really aware of UFC.
I'm gonna look that up now. I want to say that because I remember watching that because we were passing this. How old I was? Jeez. I was right, 93. So I remember sort of having I borrowed a tape of somebody who recorded it, and then a bunch of us were. And I remember I was in college, at the time. So yeah, 93, and it was because just like the first few fights were just these train wrecks before everything sort of came about. And yeah, the UFC Hall of Fame, I think it's been around. I know it has for about 4 or 5 years. But no physical place yet. So it's not where you can visit anything, unfortunately. I'm sure that when they get it together, it'll be in Vegas. They'll have their Legends, or their Modern Era wing, Pioneer wing, Contributor wing. But then they do this one really weird thing that I absolutely hate. And I want your take on if that would work in other sport Hall of Fames.
Okay.
They have match hall. They'll take a match and put that in.
Oh, interesting.
Like actual fights.
That is interesting. Do I think it would work? I kind of think it would. Like, I don't think that... let me think about this. I think College Football Hall of Fame would benefit from that.
So like what, the Hail Mary game from Flutie, just keeping a Boston sort of twist on that.
Yeah, so the first one that comes to mind, obviously, is the Baseball Hall of Fame for me for that. Mm-hmm. Baseball's greatest games is like constantly played over on MLB Network during the off season. Can't tell you how many times I've seen Game 6 of the '75 World Series. Mainly because I'm a Red Sox fan, and every time it's on, I watch it and then forget that Game 7 ever happened. But I think baseball would probably benefit from that just with how much nostalgia it has. Hockey should just have, well, as America, it just have the U.S. hockey team beating the Soviets on repeat all the time.
Well, I think any Canadian or really anyone else who understands hockey would put that in their top 5, period. And if you don't, regardless of where you're from, then you just don't understand the game. Right.
Or there's also that great Canada-U.S. hockey game from how long ago was that?
Oh, there's been so many.
It was the last. It's like 6 years ago now because I didn't go to the last Olympics.
there was that big one with Canada US at the 2010. Was it 2010?
Yeah. It was the one with Sidney Crosby and Patrice Bergeron. That's the one. I can't think of it. But yeah, I mean, hockey would be interesting. Football, of course, also with just John Facenda has already done that without actually putting the games in there. Like the Ice Bowl is already a Hall of Fame thing, even if it's not necessarily a Hall of Fame. It's interesting. I actually don't hate it. Yeah, I don't know much about the UFC. I am glad. I'm a little upset that it's 4 years old. It should only be 2 years old because I always feel like anything needs to exist for 25 years for it to have a Hall of Fame about it. With the exception of, like, if you had a franchise that was around for immediately and all of a sudden right away you had a LeBron James level talent who stayed with you for 15 years. As soon as they retires, you can create the Hall of Fame off of that person. But other than that, your franchise or organization, something needs to be around for 25 years, I think, before you start putting anyone in. So now I have no problem with it, but I feel like it started 2 years early just by my math, what you said. But it'd be interesting. What do you think about that? Well, I mean, you said you hate it, but what do you hate about it?
I think what I hate about that is, in a way, it's not. I hate it more in some ways for these games like that because I just don't like the idea of certain people who were in that game now all of a sudden they can classify themselves as a Hall of Famer.
Oh, okay, well, fair enough on that.
That's pretty much my only objection. I don't have any more nuance than that. That's it.
Well, I think there's a line you can draw there. I mean, let's just go back to that 75 World Series game. I mean, you have Pete Rose, you should be a Hall of Famer. You got Fisk, you got Jim Rice, Johnny Bench, who else? A couple other Reds in that team who are in the Hall of Fame. There's a whole bunch of Hall of Famers in that game. That doesn't mean that the rest of the guys on that team for the Red Sox and Reds should be in the Hall of Fame. Just because you participate, I think there's a line you draw there. Just because you participate in a Hall of Fame game doesn't mean that you're actually a Hall of Famer. The game is a Hall of Fame. I don't know. It's interesting. It almost seems like it should be a Library of Congress thing.
Boy, I like that.
The Library of Sports Congress decides that certain matches, races, whatever it is, are worthy of their film being preserved in like a sports archive / Library of Congress sort of thing.
Maybe
that I would actually be very much in favor.
Maybe someone who's got a Hall of Fame related website should work on that. Oh, wait a minute.
Do you know anyone like that?
Yeah. See, unfortunately, he's sleeping with my wife.
Oh, jeez. That's hard. I mean, that's hard to do on a small island. Word gets around.
A lot of things work. Well,
that's interesting, though. Like I said, I know nothing about the UFC. If I want to see people punch each other until they get bloody, I'll just go to Southie during St. Patrick's Day. But I don't enjoy. I can honestly tell you the last UFC fight I think I remember seeing. I have no idea who these people are, but I was at a bar in Washington D.C. Buffalo Billiards, which is now gone. It was an awesome place. We were hanging out, my wife and I, before we were married, and our wedding anniversary is actually tomorrow. It'll be 10 years tomorrow.
Oh, congrats.
Yeah, thank you. But we watched a fight that was like on the TV while we were there with friends, and one of the competitors had like a bright bleach blonde afro. I have no idea who that fighter is or if he's any good. But by the end of the fight, his bleach blonde afro was pink. Just from the blood. And I was like, forget this. I don't find this entertaining. So that's where I am with UFC, and that's probably the last match I ever watched. So.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I think there's just so much. There's a lot of nuances to the sport. And I think it was also too if it was back then, depending on what year it was. A lot of the brutalities. I mean, it's still a very brutal sport, obviously, but a lot of the carnage is gone. So, like the increase of like technical knockouts, technical submissions, or that exists really didn't before.
Okay.
But, having said that, I mean, like, it's certainly not a sport for everyone. And even myself sometimes, it's not a must-watch for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I know when I was living in this before I moved, and going back to George St Pierre, he was headlining the Dome, and some people wanted to see if I wanted to go with them, and the cost sort of scared me away. And I think if I felt bigger about the sport, I definitely would have spent the money for it, and I chose not to.
Okay.
Of course, I would have also got drunk too, like I usually do. I would have not remembered anything, and maybe that was a good idea at the time. Perhaps. But
anyway, congratulations to Canadian legend George St Pierre.
Absolutely. And now, so that's sort of segueing to, I guess, someone who's, I think, become a Boston legend in his own way, Richard Seymour. The right choice.
Yeah.
So congratulations to Richard Seymour and all of you voters. That was the right choice out of the three. No brainer to me.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Even though Boston sports writers are apoplectic by the fact that Parcells, their favorite Patriots coach over the last 40 years, was snubbed again, as they kept saying. Remember, he went 32-32, walked out on the team during the Super Bowl, essentially. And the one thing they're all like, well, he introduced Belichick to Kraft. Great. When he did that, Belichick resigned and tried to join the Patriots, and he held the whole thing up for ransom and charged them a first-round draft pick out of it. So let's not say he was a saint who's just like, hey, here's a great coach for you. But anyway, let's go to Seymour. So Seymour was elected finally on his fifth bite at the apple for the Patriots Hall of Fame, which seems crazy. There's only one person, though, that he lost out to who I have a serious issue with, and that's Matt Light, who the two of them were drafted actually in the same draft back in 2001. I would definitely put Seymour in over Light.
I would too.
But the other ones are hard to. The other ones are hard to argue. It was Rodney Harrison and God, I should have this up in front of me. But anyway, I'll get it up in front of me in a second here. But he got I listened to the call that he had with Bob Kraft, and Kraft said that essentially he got just under 50% of the vote. So that's a pretty dominating, within a 3-horse race, that's a pretty dominating win, would be my guess. My guess is that Parcells finished second and Vrabel finished a distant third. But he's ridiculously worthy of this honor. He was with the Patriots 8 years. He was a first-team All-Pro 3 years in a row. He was a Pro Bowler. I can't remember, it was 5 or 6 times. I think you and I both agree that he's going to be on the finalist list for the Pro Football Hall of Fame coming up over the next several years. At some point, I guess the next 2 or 3 years, he's probably getting in there as well. And this can only help him getting in from here. So it was only Seymour's 4th time. So he lost out to Ray Claiborne, who was highly underrated from the 80s teams. It was great to see Claiborne get in when he did, and then Rodney Harrison last year. Seymour was by far the most deserving, and anybody who's arguing that Parcells deserves to be in this time over 2 guys who have 3 rings with the Patriots and were major parts. I mean, Vrabel was with the team for 7 years. Vrabel only caught 8 passes his career, and all of them were for touchdowns. Aren't many people who could say that.
Actually, it was 10. It was 10. It was 8 for New England, and then 2 10? More for I want to say Kansas City.
Kansas City. Yeah, Kansas City.
Yeah, can you tell I've been working on my top 50 New England Patriots?
There you go. Vrabel is one of my absolute favorites. A guy who Pittsburgh just didn't know what to do with. It's the same thing with Detroit with Kyle Van Noy, who just left for Miami. Van Noy is just like, what do we do with this guy? The Patriots like, we will find a job for him. And he just completely parlayed that into a huge contract down in Miami. But, Seymour is the correct choice. And I'm glad to see. It's going to be interesting going forward, though, seeing what happens with Parcells now.
It really will be. It's funny you sort of like brought up how there were so many articles or opinions where, Parcells is snubbed, all this, that, the other thing. And then I read two different ones where pretty much said Parcells was only put there just to make sure that Seymour got through.
Oh, that's possible too. That's interesting because the other person they could have put up, who was eligible for the first time this year, and I sort of expect to be the third person on the ballot, was Logan Mankins, who will, we both believe, be a semifinalist at least coming up for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And it will be a finalist at some point in the next 3 or 4 years. They just have too many offensive linemen on there they have to deal with at the moment. So I was expecting him to be the next guy. So I think actually next year it'll be Vrabel, Mankins, and then, Wilfork is also, I think, eligible next year. Vince Wilfork. So it'll be interesting to see if Parcells manages to get his way in there. Because if it's those three, then I think Wilfork wins because everybody loves that man.
How can you not?
I'm sorry?
How can you not love that guy? You don't have to be a Patriots fan to love Vince Wilfork.
Yeah, when he left, he was with the Texans for, I don't know if it was 1 year or two, but the year he was with the Texans, he went to the training camp, and he showed up for one of the team meetings wearing nothing but a huge pair of overalls. Like, no shirt, no underwear underneath, like cowboy boots and a huge pair of overalls. And he showed up for the walkthrough, for the first team walkthrough, and everyone just absolutely died laughing. That dude Vince Wilfork is one of my favorite Boston athletes of all time. And that's saying something when you're a nose tackle.
Love it.
So,
absolutely love it.
The one thing I do have to say, though, is, again, everyone can hate on the Patriots, and I understand why. But the one thing the Patriots do better than any other team is the Hall of Fame. The idea that just like the Red Sox, everybody's in the Hall of Fame. I remember they had like a Hall of Fame class one year. It was John Valentin, Mike Greenwell, and like a whole bunch of guys. I'm like, yeah, they played for us for a while, but really? And the Patriots just have a system where they come up with 3 people, and then they let the fans vote on which of those 3 get in. Like, it's a simple system. The sports writers come up with their 3 nominees. The fans vote online. One of the 3 gets in, and every once in a while, every 4 to 5 years, they have a senior candidate. Or if they have a situation where they put the former announcer Gil Santos when he got sick, the guy who made all those calls for all the Super Bowl stuff, they put him in 2013, and he passed away a couple years later. But that's the way every team should do this. Literally, just have the fans vote on the best players. And a lot of teams, like, let's just take the Steelers. The Steelers have tons of guys in the Ring of Honor who should be there, but they should. The Steelers are a franchise that should have their own separate sort of Hall of Fame in addition to that, and just let everyone vote. They want to put Ryan Shazier in, put Ryan Shazier in. Like, one of the guys in the Patriots Hall of Fame who was voted in almost unanimously when he came up there was Kevin Falk. Everybody loves Kevin Falk in New England. Is Kevin Falk anywhere near a Hall of Famer?
No.
But, no, it's not even close. But he is a Patriots legend up here, and every team should do this the way the Patriots do.
I have to agree with you completely. The Toronto Maple Leafs, it took them years just for them to finally retire numbers and just honor that. Mm-hmm. And like that's one of those great historic franchises. There's so many older franchises that have no excuse to fail for this. I'm trying to think of like who's like what's the worst right now for really acknowledging anybody. It's been around forever.
Well, it's not the Bears, because the Bears have more retired numbers than even the Celtics do. The Bears basically can't retire any more numbers, so they won't have enough numbers for people to play. They also have the most Hall of Famers of any franchise. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a few that it's not coming to me right now, but I know like there's a couple. I always thought Pittsburgh didn't do a great job. The Steelers, for that matter.
I mean, the Red Sox did a terrible job with retiring numbers until very recently. Because for growing up my entire life until Jackie Robinson Day came in, it was 1-4-8-9. So it was Joe Cronin, Bobby Doerr, Carl Yastrzemski, Ted Williams, and that was everybody in the 100 and whatever year history of the franchise for the retired 42. And then they're like, well, we get a few other people up there. They finally got, Johnny Pesky, the fourth member of that group. I guess there's another one of your Mount Rushmores. Bobby Dorr, Joe Cronin, Ted Williams, and Johnny Pesky.
Oh, Pesky being the Theodore.
Yeah. So even though he's a much better player than Phil Rizzuto, but Rizzuto played for the Yankees. So yes, and then now we have Boggs and Ortiz and Pedro and Carlton Fisk and all those guys finally got up there, and Rice. But it took forever for them to do that, mainly because the Red Sox are a corrupt and terribly run organization from approximately 1918 through our current corrupt ownership has managed to win 4 championships. So since 1918. So
we should stick with baseball. One person who says he's a Hall of Famer right now, and I'm sort of even though statistically he's probably not there, I really like this guy a lot, Yadi Molina, who said actually, if you look at my stats, I'm there.
He's probably a little short, but it's not crazy.
No, it's really not. Also, 2 World Series rings as one of their leaders. And you know how I feel about playoff importance not being recognized in baseball and how strong I feel about that. If I've got my Hall of Fame vote, I'd make a strong case for Yachty right now. And actually, that's one guy that you and I didn't come up with last week when we were looking at people who really need to pad stats. Because I don't think I don't think there's that much he can really do stat-wise. If he goes in, he's going in on reputation.
Well, he's a 9-time All-Star. He's a 8-time Gold Glover. He's finished 3rd and 4th in MVP voting. Just looking at his counting stats, he's got 156 homers, 916 in RBIs, hits. Where is he? 1963 in hits. Career batting average of 282, which for a catcher is not terrible. Particularly someone who's, he's been doing this now, how many seasons? He started 2004 through 2019, so it's 16 years. So according to JAWS, which again we use a lot, but we both recognize is not the be-all and end-all of measurement for the Hall of Fame, he is the 24th greatest catcher of all time. Between Jim Sundberg, who we both agree is a hell of a catcher and largely overlooked, and Charlie Bennett, who I can honestly say I don't know that much about. And Lance Parrish is right behind him. So we're talking right in that sort of zone. Generally, Hall of Famers for catchers, we have the top 10 who are eligible now that Ted Simmons gone last year. The top 10 who are eligible are all in. The only one who the top 11, actually. The only one who's up there is the 7th greatest catcher, according to that, is Joe Mauer. And Mauer's not eligible yet. And then we have Buck Ewing at 14, Roger Bresnahan at 19, and Campanella at 22, and Ernie Lombardi at 28. So he's at least ahead of 2 Hall of Famers. Ray Schalk and Rick Farrell, who are from a long time ago, are also behind him as well. So he's in the zone, but he's a little far down, probably. It's interesting. It's an interesting case.
I think if we go back to traditional stats, getting over 2,000 in hits will help.
And over 1,000 in RBIs would help as well.
Yeah, definitely. But he's just one of those guys where I don't look at him statistically as much as I do with other players. There's not like one game if you watch the Cardinals where the announcers aren't gushing all over him, no matter what he's doing. You just see this tenacious look in his face. The guy wants to win. The pitchers love him that he has. He's one of those guys I want to overlook. A few metrics if he's a little bit lower. Yeah,
the only one that has him in of all the measuring statistics is the Hall of Fame Monitor. They have him at a 162 in batting, which is crazy because the Hall of Fame was 100. But on everything else, for the gray ink on batting, he's only at 20, and the average Hall of Famer is a 144. So I'm not exactly sure how there's a huge discrepancy there. But if you look at the guys who have him most similar to, I mean, we're talking A.J. Brzezinski, Benito Santiago, Tony Pena, Bob Boone, Jason Kendall, Terry Steinbach, and a whole bunch of guys from a long, long time ago, like Sherm Lawler and Deacon Mcguire, who I, again, don't remember watching. You might, being born, 6 years older than me, but I don't.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Tell me your favorite Deacon Mcguire memory.
It was that time, when I visited him at we were next to each other at the shoe shine stand. I don't know. I'm trying to think of old-timey shit.
Well, then, first of all, it wasn't a shoe shine. It was a haberdashery.
Oh, haberdashery, sorry.
What do you think within 5 years, so it was the last year that Deacon Mcguire played baseball?
I have no idea. 1902.
He retired at the age of 48 in 1912. His first year was as a 20-year-old in 1884.
Jesus.
With the Toledo Blue Stockings. And went all the way with the Detroit. He appeared with the Detroit Tigers as a 48-year-old in 1912. Good for him.
Awesome. This is probably the most he's ever been on an audio show.
Just so I can know who Deacon Mcguire is. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to say it's probably the first time he's ever been mentioned on an audio show in the last 100 years.
I'm not sure they had audio when he started. So anyway, so Yadier. So if it were up to you right now, is Yadier Molina a Hall of Famer?
Oof. For the other intangibles, yes.
It's going to be interesting because they're going to talk about things like pitch framing. Like, doesn't Yadier Molina bring the pitch framing debate into the Hall of Fame? Or it's going to be the Bill Mazeroski, how much does defense count? I mean, pitch framing is such a huge part now of catcher's defense until we get robot umpires. It's interesting. I don't think he's in, but it's just based off of the numbers. But if he got in, would I rant and rave about it? No. Why? Because, like you said, with the way he's gushed over by announcers, he seems like a Hall of Famer, even if he may not actually be there.
Yeah, and he's one of those players too. I mean, like, I would vote for him. Now, if he's a one and done on the ballot, I'm not that upset either.
Well, he should be more than a one and done.
He should be.
Certainly. I think every Cubs fan is going to say that.
Well, the thing is, too, he's not done yet. So he's 37. Not sure how much his knees can sort of hold out. 2019 was the last year that he didn't win any individual award because he was an All-Star and a Gold Glove winner. Probably shouldn't have won the Gold Glove in 2018, but that's neither here nor there. Never had a negative defensive B-WAR.
Mm-hmm.
So, he still can add to that. If he can get up to like 45 in overall B-WAR, that wouldn't hurt either.
Yeah. Again, if you just look at all the things here, though, like we've talked about Jorge Posada before. He's behind Posada on these rankings. He's behind Jason Kendall, who is a heck of a ball player for a long time, particularly those Pirates teams. But I don't think either of us actually thinks Jason Kendall's a Hall of Famer.
No.
So I don't know. It's tough. The whole thing is complicated by the fact that he's a catcher. There's kind of a different standard for catchers. But it took Ted Simmons this long to get in.
Well, the other thing, too, is we're not going to have – I'm assuming if baseball does start up, there's going to be no All-Star game this year. So Molina, he could have got off to a really good start, or he could have just easily been voted in. So he could have conceivably gotten a 10th All-Star appearance. Now, when you're a 10-time All-Star –
Yeah, I was just thinking that, too.
Regardless of whether you deserved it or not, Derek Jeter, I'm looking at your last All-Star, but it's still these things just sometimes just get washed and, just washed over, like glossed over all the time. Like there's never going to be an asterisk whenever they say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said Ted Simmons, who just got in, was an 8-time All-Star. So I wonder if he had, he won a Silver Slugger a year, he didn't get an All-Star. I wonder if, all of a sudden he's a 9-time All-Star or a 10-time All-Star, if that makes that big of a difference.
When it's 10, it kind of, when you're hitting that double digit, I think it kind of does. I mean, I think there's a bigger difference between 9 and 10 than 4 and 5.
I agree with that.
Yeah. But yeah, so that one, just something that I just we threw in there last minute just with Yachty, because that was something that I was actually surprised when that name came up today. Like, how come we didn't talk about him? Like, we didn't even bring him up at all. It wasn't even on my radar last week.
Yeah, we didn't. That's interesting.
So,
all right. Well,
before we go into sort of our US Hall of Fame, Athletic Hall of Fame, please tell everyone who is the winner of the greatest villain of all time on the Disney universe.
Well, I know who it is. I guess the person I manipulate strings for without really meaning to, because I haven't seen Hunchback of Notre Dame in 20-something years, but it's Claude Frollo of the Hunchback of Notre Dame. He pulls it out in the end over Scar to win the title of Disney's villainous villain.
Was it close? It was 60-40 last time we talked.
It ended up a little closer. It was like 50. It's closer to 56-44. So, but it was close. But he did end up winning over the guy who killed his brother and blamed his nephew for it and made him run away. So there was genocide versus the world's oldest sin, and genocide won out, or attempted genocide. So.
No, I said that right from the start. You've sold it so well.
I know. When you think about it, though, like that guy I said last week, the very first time you see him, he kicks a woman down the stairs because he thinks she's carrying stolen goods. She ends up falling and hitting her head and dying. And then he grabs what he thinks is the stolen goods, and it's Quasimodo as a baby, and he goes to throw it down the well. And that's like one of the less disturbing things he did. He's just getting warmed up. So
that's when you're struggling to come up with something nice on the obituary.
Yes. Yeah. He was only a 3 seed in the tournament, but ended up winning the whole thing.
It can happen. Villanova was an 11.
True.
What's going to be your next tournament?
I don't know. So I did a couple years ago the most annoying child television show, which Caillou ran away with at the end, and we had this one for Disney villains. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. I used to do a countdown every November of the greatest mustaches and various things, but then I ran out of things I wanted to look at mustaches for. But maybe we can do. I'll have to think about it. I'll have to think about exactly what would be a good enough topic that would get people excited about it. So it's probably something pop culture-y. Maybe we'll do the greatest bands not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and see what people think.
Could very well. I'll tell you right now, though, it'll definitely be sort of like rock oriented, whether you mean for it to be or not. My number one seed of Kraftwerk will be bounced by a 16.
Yeah, that's probably true. I'll put them up against like the B-52s, and it won't even be close.
They'd probably lose in a popular vote to Skid Row. I don't know why they're on my head, but
I'm excited about the new commercial with House with the Rat Problem, and it's the band Rat just playing Round and Round in their basement.
I have not seen this.
Oh, it's a fantastic commercial because I know it's supposed to be like somehow making fun of Rat, but I'm just so excited to hear the song and see that they're all alive that every time it comes up, I get excited. So.
Love that song. Probably my favorite hair metal song of all time is Round and Round by Rat.
Interesting.
Of that era, yeah, I would say it is.
I have an album called Big Hair Rules that I put together in college, which is really a lost art, the making of a good mixtape or in mixed CD. And that's one of my favorites that's on there. I played it for my kids. They like that one, and they really like We're Not Gonna Take It by Twisted Sister. Those were pretty much your two favorites.
On a YouTube rabbit hole, I found D. Snyder going in front of Congress. I forget why, but just sort of like watching him talk, it just sort of like gave me flashbacks of watching Frank Zappa try to explain things, and I'm just too sober right now. It's just not working for me. But
understood.
Yeah, ideas. I've been thinking a lot about this because I think we're going to get something going for this in terms of. I guess it'll have to be housed virtually, obviously, for the United States Athlete Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah, I'd say United States and Canada. Let's put Canada in there. So, like, the United States, so, I mean, if they're Canadian Olympic athletes, I think they should be eligible for this as well. But like, basically the 4 or 5-ish major sports in the U.S., if you participated in them or in an Olympic sport, or if there's someone who makes an argument, I guess tennis or golf don't necessarily count as those major sports either, but PGA Tour or something like that, putting those people into something, I think is what I think we're talking about here, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. It's sort of like regardless of sport, I think the first thing we have to come up with then is a nominating committee.
True.
But before we even
get there, though, I have one thing I think we need to do with this, though.
What's that?
I say that we need there are just so many of them. We need to be able to move it along a little bit every single year and make a few more people eligible.
Mm-hmm.
How long from when they retire do you think they need to wait before they become eligible? Because we're talking like, let's just say the Federal League in 1886 to now, right? The Federal League, I think, is the real professional sports league in America. Not that we're going to have a whole bunch, although maybe at some point we put old Hoss Radbourne in just because he might kill us with cholera if we don't from the grave. But from then on, if we do like, I don't know, even 10 years, there's just so many people and we need to be able to build it. If we did like, I feel like 50 years is just like bringing us back to 1970 is too long, but like 25 years from it too long still. I'm trying to figure out like how can we keep people eligible and bring it along over time.
Well, and also too, it depends on the sport because if you look at Tiger Woods, who's going to be 50, well, he's still active. Or no, he's going to be 45, not 50. Yeah, because they changed it from 50 to 45. Yeah, because I was thinking, how the hell did he become older than me all of a sudden?
45 is a new 50 in golf. So,
literally,
at least for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all questions. Like, is it 50 years from when they started? Like, how do we make this determination? Because I think like, so let's just take Michael Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
So Jordan retired officially in 2002, although we all think he in our heads retired in 98 and the Washington Wizards weren't actually a thing. So he wouldn't become eligible if we did 25 years until 2027. Does that seem like something we want? Like, no. When did Gretzky retire?
Gretzky retired in 99.
In 99. So he'd be eligible in 2024 if we did it that way.
If we did it that way, but I don't have a problem sort of if people are still active. Because if you've got someone like LeBron James right now, who is arguably in the top 10, if not the top 5, some would say incorrectly that he's the greatest basketball player of all time. But
ESPN just had their countdown of the top 74 players in NBA history for some reason. I don't know why it's 74, but that's the number they did.
I think LeBron, the NBA this week they had
LeBron to number 2.
I think it's the NBA 74.
I guess that makes sense. Well, the 74th greatest player was Artis Gilmore, in case you're wondering. But they had LeBron at number 2. Behind only MJ.
Yeah, I saw that. Actually, and I felt a little bit validated because Tim Duncan was ahead of Kobe.
Yeah, you and I both said that in the podcast, that we would both have him slightly ahead, and he was one spot up.
Yep. Yeah, I felt pretty good about that.
10 was Shaq, 9 was Kobe, 8 was Duncan.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I know. I don't know why I took that the most out of it, but I don't necessarily have, because the sports are so different. I don't really want to see when they're sort of done participating. I think maybe if there's like a blanket age, once you turn 40.
Oh. How about once you turn 50?
Could do that.
Because 40, we still got Brady going.
Yeah, but if he's still active, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, we can set whatever rule we want. It's. I don't think it's not like he's going to show up
yet. You're not going to show up yet.
Mm-hmm.
The power of yet, my friend. Okay, so I think rather than 25 years to retire, I think that I feel better about having age 50, so there's at least some sort of thought on their careers. But you're right. LeBron is what? He seems like he's 50, but he's only like 36. So it would be even another 14 years. I don't know. We'll still have to fine tune that. But go ahead and talk about the nominating committee.
Yeah. So the one thing I want to make sure that once we decide to put something together is that we're reflecting, different groups, different age groups.
Mm-hmm.
If we can get some former athletes on this, and I think I can. And then we just
that'd be fantastic if we could do that.
Yeah, and then we just sort of like blow this out like one big Zoom meeting.
That's fine with me. I don't know if you saw, by the way, Alex Voltaire got together his nominating committee for the Rock Hall thing that he wanted to do.
Yeah, I did see that. Great job. That he put
I know.
together.
I was like, I want to be on that, and I was like, who's on it? I'm like, oh, okay. I was like, yeah, all right. Those people deserve to be there over me. But yeah, no, if we can get people like that, that would be absolutely fantastic from all the country, men, women, different cultural backgrounds, older, younger. I think it'd be great. How many people want to run this committee?
16.
Okay, I was going to say 15, so I'm okay with 16.
Yeah. I'm just sort of like thinking the way Zoom works, like 4 boxes.
Yeah, that works. That's fine.
Yeah, even then, I'm shaking on that. We can sort of like hammer out some of the other stuff too. I do actually want to keep it. I know this is sort of weird saying this as a Canadian, but I do want to keep this just the United States and just sort of celebrate that. Because once you're sort of blurring that in with multi-countries, it just changes things. Now, you can have non-U.S. born in this. So, I think, like Hakeem Olajuwon, for example, who is now a U.S. citizen, Brett Hull, Canadian born.
Or Pedro Martinez is one of the first people I think of, too.
Okay, yeah.
For, like, a Red Sox.
Yeah, so,
Pedro's...
And just pushing the boundary of U.S. sports. Wayne Gretzky, even though he... is what he did for the LA Kings and the profile of hockey in the United States, I think is very important.
Yeah, agreed. No, 100%. I don't think you have hockey. Well, you could have almost no hockey players that are important. No offense to Brett Hull, but he's not one of the top 10 hockey players of all time.
No, and it's sort of tricky. And then we have to figure out, okay, we're going to have like contributors. We're definitely not going to be putting a bunch of commissioners in right away. That's for fucking sure.
I don't know, John. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop right before I make the joke. So I know. Yeah, I got self-control. It's weird. So
well, one of us has to.
I think we should have some coaches and contributors as well. Probably.
Yeah.
Is it a Sports Hall of Fame if you don't have a John Wooden or a Red Auerbach or a Vince Lombardi, or there are tons. I'm sure. Joe McCarthy, who was the coach of the Yankees for all times. I can't think of his first name. McCarthy.
Crap. And
Casey Stengel.
It's
not Joe McCarthy, is it?
I'm picturing the damn face, and I can't remember his first name either. John?
Yeah, but Casey. John McCarthy. I apologize, Yankees fans. I should know this, and it's just not in my head right now.
Well, it's not like you saw him in the opposing dugout.
Or who's the coach of Grambling all those years? Eddie Robinson.
Yep.
Like people like that should definitely have a place in this, or should be looked at. Here's a question for you. So this was in my opinion, the most controversial when they did the ESPN 100 for the end of the 1990s. They had the 100 greatest athletes of the century and that sports century thing. And number 37, which I remember off the top of my head, which is how shocked I was by it, was Secretariat, who was a horse. Are we keeping this human only?
Yes.
Okay. I apologize, Secretariat, Man of War, and Mind That Bird. Was that the last one who won? I don't remember. But okay. That's fine with me.
Yeah, no, that's not going to happen. We're not going to go for any kind of gimmicks or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have to settle on an age. We'll be the co-chairs of this. So and once we sort of figure out how we're going to work that, and then so we can have like a subgroup for the contributors. Then we have to also decide whether we're going to have like a mandatory amount of women who are inducted, or do we just put them on one complete group? Because like in basketball, for example, they've got the men's committee and the women's committee for the Naismith Hall. Whereas the Hockey Hall of Fame, I believe it's a blanket. I am more of the belief to just do like one blanket.
I'm more of the belief to. So let's just say there's 16 of us. We come up with a panel of 15 or 16 athletes. And then we're going to have people are voting to decide, not just us. Correct.
Correct.
Okay. So let the people decide. But I think we put everybody out. Say we have 15 or 16 athletes. I just say 15 because that's what the Rock Hall normally does. Or what am I saying? The Rock Hall changes all the time. But in my head, the Rock Hall does 15. But say we do 16, and how many are we getting in? 5? Are we putting in 8?
I think for an inaugural class, you put in a whole lot more. So you put in one large group right at the beginning, and then everything. So there's a little bit more prestige for the inaugural class, as there should be. Because even if there's only 20 people who were inducted in, let's say, there that chasm between number 20 and number 30 in terms of his or her importance to American sport probably won't be that much different. But there should be something special about being part of that first group. But the first group will be larger, and then it just sort of goes down to everything sort of being the same thing. So let's say 5 from second on.
So let's just say we're doing 20. Okay.
Sure.
So are those 20, 15 athletes and 5 contributors? Is it 17 athletes and 3 contributors? Like, how's that break down? Or are we keeping contributors separate? Just saying, like, we have 20 athletes and then 3 contributors.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think that just sort of rounds out better. Because just from doing this for as long as I have, when I'm not including contributors in my core lists, not a whole lot of people seem to give a shit.
Okay. All right. So then are we coming up with... So if we're going to do it that way at the first one, are we coming up with a list of 50 that we're then having people vote 20 out of? Because we're not doing 25 and having 20 get in.
No, I think what we have to do is we come up with sort of like this one group. Once we sort of like put together our nominating committee, then we're also going to put a bunch of names forward, vote on that internally, and then make our cases. And then from there, we'll pair up that group that we open up to the public. We'll follow the Patriots model and leave that open to Americans. Yeah. Or not just non-Americans can vote too.
Right. All right. So anyway, non-Patriots fans can vote for the Patriots HOF as well. Which I'm one. Yeah, you did.
I did.
And you voted for the right person.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Not that I ever tell you who to vote for, but you did vote for the right person.
You could tell me who to vote for, and that'd be okay.
True. Okay, so if we're going to do this, then let's just say we have 16 people on the committee. Are we each bringing 8 names, or how many people are going to be cutting this list down from? So let's just say if we each draw 8 names, right? 8 times 16 is 80, 128. names we'd be cutting down from. Does that seem like an appropriate number to start with and then build our way down?
I think so.
Okay. All right. So we have some parameters here. We'll have to figure out exactly how old or anybody you should be in order to be eligible, but that's something we can work out maybe with discussion of other people.
Yeah, and I think because
we need to get some more folks on this. So maybe some journalists, some athletes, men, women from around the area, different sports.
Right. And that's something that we want to make sure that we've definitely accomplished where, well, you and I have sort of like filled out the middle-aged white heterosexual thing, which is really hard to come by, right? It's a hard demographic.
Right. We are a dying breed, my friend.
We definitely are. So I'll put it this way. If we ever do a family picture with the whole 16, they all can't look like us.
No, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
So, interesting. I know a few people who might be interested to ask. I have no idea. How hard is it for someone to want to participate in something that is not on their website?
That is not on their...
Like, so let's just say let's just say you wanted to get someone who reported on hockey. Let's say we got a beat reporter for the Toronto Maple Leafs somehow.
Okay.
On this thing. How hard is it going to be for them to participate if it's not like on the Toronto Maple Leafs whatever site or things like that?
Well, it shouldn't be that hard.
Okay. I don't know these things. These are things I'm just thinking out loud here. So.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's up to that individual and what it is that they want to sort of like bring to it and how passionate they are. Obviously, some people are going to be more passionate than others. Some will bring more areas of expertise than others. I know, despite like of the big four sports, we were just sort of like talking. Hockey's my weakest, although I still feel comfortable enough to do mock. That's the other thing too. That'll be the first test actually, and by the way, you're going to be part of this in case you didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, because we're going to come up with our mock hockey Hall of Fame committee, because that'll be the next big one that actually happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just in case you didn't know that, that's what you.
I mean, I think that's a good thing to do. Just mock committees for each. I think Alex, and for those who don't know, Alex Voltaire is a guy who I believe lives in Singapore.
Yes.
Who is very, very active on Twitter and is really good with Rock and Roll Hall of Fame stuff. And he's a really great person to read his stuff all over the place. I had
former guest of the program.
Oh, was he a guest of the program?
Yes.
I didn't realize that. But Alex knows what the hell he's doing. But this was originally his idea for the Rock Hall, since we're going to be missing. But it makes sense for our site, and I say our even though it's yours, but for our site to do something like this, because this is what we do.
Yeah, but this is our project.
Right. Of course. Well, this one certainly is our project. But I mean, in terms of like all the other sports as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So like that's one, I think it's sort of a good place to start. And yeah, to anyone who's sort of listening there, I know Vinny would want to do will definitely want to be in for football and baseball. Vinny Laspinuso.
Yeah, definitely.
And he fills in that youngin category.
He is a youngin. That is true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then he knows a ton about football. Like,
oh my god,
for how old he is, he knows a ridiculous amount about football. So, let me get rid of the qualifier. Regardless of how young he is, he knows a ridiculous amount about football. But particularly for someone who's not even 20 yet, is he? Is he 20?
20 or 21.
Oh, he's okay, because he was 19 years old, I think, when he started talking to him. But I lose track. You have kids and you're in quarantine. You have no idea what day it is, let alone what time it is, or how much time has gone by.
I don't know. All you Americans look the same to me anyway.
You've been watching that episode of South Park where they play dodgeball against the Chinese team. One of the funniest. Again, South Park he has some really funny episodes, but that was one of the best ones where they go to China for the international dodgeball tournament, and the Chinese announcer's just like, all the Americans look alike. So
I didn't even realize I just did that, but yeah, that's so true.
Yeah. So Anyway, all right. So let's think about this. Start getting a list together offline. See if we can get some people from different areas and stuff. I will ask a few people around and see if anybody's interested. I mean, part of it, we're going to have to ask people who we know, but like how disparate a group of people does have to be. So, for example, I'm just going to give up a person who I would probably ask if he has time, which he may not, is my brother. Because my brother's the sports media director for Notre Dame, has covered college basketball and college football for 35 years. He's related to me, however. Is that a problem? He's in his 60s.
Well, that's another age group, though. I like that. Okay. So, I mean, he's a member of the Monogram Club over at Notre Dame, which is Notre Dame's Sports Hall of Fame. What's that? What's the Monogram Club?
It's Notre Dame Sports Hall of Fame.
Okay.
So I mean, to be in there is not like getting an American University Sports Hall of Fame. So he when he got in, Upper Deck made a special baseball card of him, which was kind of cool.
Damn.
Yeah, and he has a broadcasting Emmy as well for play-by-play. So he's, I mean, that's the first person I'm asking. But I just wanted to see how far apart, and I don't want to put my brother on the spot if he ever listens to this to see, but he may be too busy because he's the sports media director for Notre Dame. But he may be able to point me towards somebody else who might be interested in participating. So if he can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, like right now, let's just figure. I think there's so many people who would want to do something like that, and we just want to. Yeah, I mean, like for him, just for what he's sort of like seen, I can't see why we would say no to that.
Yeah, well, he actually was. I think I don't know if I told you this before. He was at the game where Havlicek stole the ball, and my brother is such a sports nerd that he actually brought his own recording equipment with him and was doing play-by-play with his buddy in the stands and recording it as he went by just for the practice of it. And we have his recording of Havlicek stealing the ball, and it sounds remarkably like what Johnny Most said, only without the 74 packs of Marlboros and 3 bottles of bourbon a day. And my brother at that point was Havlicek stole the ball. He would have been 17. He would have been 17 when that happened. So
it's awesome. I love it. Love it.
Yeah. So anyway, okay. So let's start thinking about this. I don't think we're going to bring it up on air probably for a little bit here until we get it covered. But do you have any ideas for next week?
Well, you had one that I really liked. If that's sort of another slow week, although this week really wasn't slow.
No.
I like something you came up with: the worst retired numbers, non-death in sports. Just stick with the big four. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, okay. That's something I'd be interested in doing. Yeah, because that is also the next segue, the next big level of what we're going to be working on at NotInHallOfFame.com. After the top 50 of each team, then it's going to rank all of the big sports, franchise Hall of Fames / Ring of Honor / how they sort of take care of their past athletes in terms of recognition. Okay, cool. Yeah.
All right, so I'll start getting that together. Maybe we have a big week and it gets delayed, but I'll start working on that.
All right, beautiful. And then I'm sure we'll have more ideas. Actually, then we can come back and see who we might have added for the United States Hall of Fame, Athletic Hall of Fame. I can't believe that doesn't exist.
Man. It doesn't it? It's weird if it doesn't.
Well, all right, we will leave here looking that up. I did a quick Google search and I couldn't find anything like that.
Yeah, because I did it too and I couldn't find any. So I just figured that this idea was so simple, somebody had to have done it. Like, I can't believe the Ringer hasn't done it yet. It just seems like something they would have done.
Yeah, I just didn't understand nothing.
I think, I didn't see anything. So I don't know how we came up with this idea that no one else has done, which seems blatantly obvious, but it seems like something we should go on with before anyone else figures it out. So. Absolutely. Love it. All right. I'll talk to you later, man. All right. Take care. Thank you so much for listening. Come back soon as we're going to have a lot more content coming up at NotInHallOfFame.com, and we hope everyone out there stays safe. Thank you again.